tell them check out the blog, bro. YouTube channel called MKO. It's pugilism, boxing algorithm. M stand for Marvin and Kevin's initials KO. Yeah, go tell them check out the blog. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is MKO, pugilism, boxing channel, talking all things boxing. And yeah, just coming to you now with another one. Once again, I send my well wishes out there to everybody at this moment in time. Worldwide, we're dealing with this pandemic, coronavirus, and I just want to say, you know, God bless to everybody out there. Hope you're all well with your families and everything, and hope everything's going well with you health-wise. Definitely thoughts and prayers with everyone at this time. And yeah, today's one, just going to speak to you about Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder, particularly about him featuring on the PBC podcast and certain things that he said on there. So first of all, one of the things I noticed was Wilder said something wasn't right with him on that day. He said he didn't feel right. He spoke about when he took his mask off, because he likes to wear these very elaborate costumes to the ring with masks and equipment on him, and he likes to really make a dramatic entrance when he fights. You know, his entrances, his costumes and outfits are always dramatic, and he said once he took the mask that he was wearing off, he knew something wasn't right. And he also said something that has piqued many people's interest, which is that he doesn't see Tyson Fury as the real champ. You know, he said that he's got sort of unfinished business with Fury, and that he doesn't see Fury as the real champ. And I can understand why many people would see this as Deontay Wilder being delusional, you know, being basic, yeah, that's the word really, delusional and in denial and bitter about losing to Tyson Fury, so much so that now he's got himself into thinking, you know, saying to himself that Fury's not the champion. And don't get me wrong, I think obviously there is going to be a bitterness there in Deontay Wilder. There is going to be an air of disappointment, and you know, perhaps maybe he is in denial about the loss. Maybe he's still shocked by it and still can't believe what happened. But I tend to take the perspective that, for me, I think it's just Deontay Wilder's mentality and his way of sort of dealing with the loss. I think that him saying that Fury's not the real champion and that he's still got unfinished business and he can't see him as the champ until he beats him in the third fight. I think that for me, I believe this is Deontay Wilder's coping mechanism. You know, I think some fighters, like, as we always bring up Anthony Joshua's name whenever heavyweight division's mentioned, but Joshua is a fighter who took kind of a different approach to Wilder, I think, mentally, because Joshua sort of spoke about losing before he did. And I think he sort of mentally geared himself up for if he ever did lose, and he spoke about it. And, you know, that's his way of dealing with it. And his way of dealing with it was to go straight back in there with Ruiz. But, yeah, the other fighters deal with it differently, deal with losses differently. And I think, for me, this is just Wilder's way of doing it. I think mentally for him, he's got to still see himself as champion. You know, he's got to still sort of see himself as undefeated. Maybe that's what is going to sort of motivate him to fight again and to get in there with Fury again. And, you know, I think that's just one of those things that he's telling himself to sort of get himself up for the third fight. And, you know, it's one of those things that is like a mechanism to help him believe he can win. You know, because I think perhaps if he was to say to himself, well, you know, Fury beat me fair and square, Fury knocked me out, you know, he took my right hand away, and, you know, perhaps if he was to look at things that way, then mentally that would sort of cripple him, and mentally that would sort of destroy any hopes of him actually being able to go there and being able to to compete or to beat Fury. You know, I think it's just his way of sort of coping. You know, I think perhaps he's that type of person where, you know, obviously he believed he was this killer before, everyone's scared of him, and, you know, no one can stand up to his power, you know. So when somebody does, I think this is just his way of sort of finding a way to deal with it, and his way of gearing himself up to come into the third fight, and then hopefully for him, you know, he'll be hoping to win it. I think this is just his way of doing that. He also spoke of snakes in his camp, so he feels there may have been some jealousy, there may be some, as what we call in England, some wrong-uns in his camp, some people who he's gonna sort of weed out. And, you know, it sounded like, I'm talking about snakes in the camp, he obviously feels there's some people who have sort of betrayed him maybe in some way, or some people who were not real friends, or I don't know, something of this nature. But he obviously feels that there's some people in his camp that he needs to get rid of. And you know, finally he also he also said that this might be the final straw for me, man. This might be the final straw, you know, speaking as if to say that you know, if it doesn't go his way against Tyson Fury, then he may walk away from boxing entirely, you know. And it's one of those things that it's always, I think it's always dangerous when boxers speak that way, you know, especially sort of before a fight, you know, because it's like they have one foot in the door and one foot out of the door. When you start speaking like that about, you know, oh, this might be the final time for me, and, you know, he's talking about walking away from the sport, talking about retirement. Yeah, that's very interesting. And it might be the case with Wilder. It's one of those things we'll just have to wait and see. But sometimes it could be just, you know, his pride talking there, and, you know, but we don't know. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where we'll just have to wait and see what happens when boxing resumes after this lockdown thing ends. You know, we'll ultimately have to see what Wilder does next. Whether, first of all, whether or not, you know, whether he wins or loses, but secondly, will he sort of stick by his word, in a sense, where he's talking about this, it might be the final straw for him. You know, will he carry on boxing? Because sometimes with boxers, you know, you can get guys who go undefeated for a long time and feel invincible, feel unbeatable, and then when somebody finally bursts that bubble, when somebody finally beats them, you know, they then mentally can't do it anymore. They then sort of just go away from the sport, because that whole thing, that whole demeanor that they had of being undefeated, of no one can beat me. Once someone comes and proves them wrong, sometimes boxers can walk away from the sport and never be the same. I mean, one example I think of is Prince Nazim Hamid, who was my favorite fighter at a point when he was fighting. He was like my number one guy, my favorite, and you know, something happened to him. Like, he left the Ingle camp, Brendan Ingle, and, you know, he went, and when he lost that fight to Marco Antonio Barrera, that really sort of destroyed him. That was pretty much the end of him. He only came back and had one comeback fight, and that was it. You never really saw him in the ring again. And I think in his case, it was just a case of that bubble, that era of invincibility, it just burst. Somebody came and somebody proved him wrong, and that was it. And I mean, with Wilder, you know, right now in the third fight, whenever that happens, we're really going to see what he's made of. And you know, it's going to be intriguing to see, because I'm definitely, based on what I've seen over the two fights, I'm definitely saying Fury's got to be favourite to win, but yeah, we'll have to see what happens with Wilder, whether he wins, whether he loses. Does he retire? Does he go away because of the ego and everything? And yeah, also Bob Arum, he chimed in on it, and he responded to Wilder's excuses, what Wilder said about the costume, and he was sort of giving Wilder these home truths about, oh, Wilder's basically only got one dimension to bring to a fight. He's only got that right hand, and that's it. And if all you've got is a right hand, you're going to get found out one day. And in a sense, that is kind of what happened with Wilder, because he did rely on his right hand way too much, and you need obviously other weapons in your arsenal. And we'll see what happens with him going forward, because I think guys are going to be a lot braver now facing Wilder, and really going to sort of let him have it. So yeah, I look forward to the third fight whenever that happens. And until next time, MKO Pugilism over and out.